Hello guys, and welcome back to the next episode in my beginners series. Now, in the last episode we just made a very nice simple flashlight like this that you can turn on and off with the left mouse button. Now in this episode we'll be focusing on getting it so that the flashlight can run out of power, and how to demonstrate that we're going to be going over to the first person character blueprint. But first of all I should be going over what we're actually going to be doing in this tutorial. So we're going to be going over how to make functions, how to make timers, how to create UI, and finally how to use event dispatchers to send that information from the player to the UI. And yeah, let's get started. So go to the BP first person character. If you're new to Unreal and you don't know the shortcuts or how to get to this point, just hold down Control and then click space, and it should open up this lovely content drawer. So mine's the first person folder, yours might be in the third person, it might be in a wide variety of character directories. So mine's in first person blueprints, first person character, and this is my character blueprint. Now if you've been following along from the last episode, you should be having something like this. This isn't all that we'll be doing in this episode, so let's get started. So what we basically want is a function that will take away from a variable, and we want a way to call that function every few seconds or fraction of a second, and we want to be able to control pretty much everything about that. So let's begin with getting a function called every few seconds. So right click and type in begin play. Now I'll be leaving some resources in the description on the actor life cycle, how everything's spawned in and all that lovely stuff. It's way too complicated for me to explain it in a short tutorial. Well, hopefully short tutorial. I don't know how long this one's going to take me, but let's go on. So event begin play. Drag off this with left click, type in set timer, and you should have all these options. Now what we want is set timer by event, and we want this to loop, basically repeat itself. The time, let's just drag off this and promote it to a variable while we're here, and we call this flashlight decay rate, and just drag off the timer as well. Sorry, not the timer, the event itself. So this is what's going to be called every few seconds. Basically how many seconds we define here is how often this event's going to be called. So just drag off this and just add event and add custom event. I'm going to type this flashlight, if I can spell it correctly, flashlight decay. And what do we want to do here? Well, we basically want a way to turn this off if it goes below a certain value. So that value is going to be a float, and it's going to be a flashlight battery power. So we want to set this to this minus something. We want to check if this is less than or equal to something. So what do we want this, and this is going to be a select. Okay, I'll go through this in a moment just to explain what's going on. And if this is less than equal, there we go. Okay, so let's go over this step by step. Let's begin here. So the flashlight battery power minus a value. I'm going to promote this value to a variable. I'm going to call this flashlight decay amount. Basically, how much every time this is called is going to be taken away from the battery power. This is going to be then fed into a less than or equals. So if this value is less than or equal to this, then the select float will take this value. No wait, hang on. So if this is less than or equal to 0, then it'll pick 0. If it's false, in other words, if this is greater than 0, it will take in this. And this select float will be the new battery power. So, how do we know if we should decay the flashlight? We don't want to decay it when it's off. How do we know if it's off or on? Well, this boolean here is flashlight on. How can we use that up here? Well, it's quite easy. Drag off this execution pin and type in branch. What this basically does is it can be used to branch off logic, i.e. the name. If this condition is true, then it goes here. If it's false, it goes here. So just drag off is flashlight on by left click, hold left click, drag it, and choose where you want it on the graph. Get and not set. Drag that into the condition. So what is this actually going to do? Every at the rate of this, then it's going to call this event here. It's going to check if the flashlight's on, and if it is, then it's going to select between 0 and the current battery power minus the decay amount. And if this is less than or equal to 0, then it's going to return 0 here. So let's just check if this is working properly. So print string. This is how you would debug your work as well, and just drag that in and it'll do the conversion for you. So just compile this, back out here, and it should, oh, rookie error. I think I did this last time as well. I forgot to change the default values. So it won't actually work if this is 0, so I'm going to set this to 0.5, so this will call this event twice a second. The initial battery power, I'm going to set this to 10. The decay amount, I'm going to set this to 1. So this should take away 2 from the battery power every second, if I believe myself. There you go. And it should go to 0, and it should stop at 0. This is exactly the behavior that we're looking for. So, hang on, did I just see that? It's starting at 8 for some reason. That's not supposed to happen. Yeah, that's very odd. Oh well. I don't know what's going on there. Taking away 2 every second. Nope, no clue. I'll debug that later on. But right now that's not important. What's important is that we basically convert this entire thing into a function by itself. So to do that, a very simple and easy way to do that is if we drag this off out here, we can just select all of these nodes here, right click and collapse to function. And I'm going to call this decay. So a few things we need to change in this function. So to open up, we can just left click on it, and here we go. So what we want is this A. We don't need, that's going to be the value. Expand it out, and we want to pass it by reference. And instead of the set flashlight battery power here, we can just say set by reference. Just drag this into here and drag that into the return node. We don't need this anymore. So what's set by reference? That basically means anything we do to this value here and set it by reference, this will change the value that's being passed in. Instead of a copy of the value, we're sending in the actual value, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's basically going, and the reason we're doing this is you might have other floats that you want to take away every so often. So for example, a stamina system, you can just pass in that, you can do the same thing here with the event timer and it will do the thing that you want. It's quite cool. B we can change to decay amount, and the condition we can just keep the same. return node. We can keep the float. We can also add in our own, saying decayed completely, and that shouldn't be a capital. Don't know why I added that in. Just wanted to be fancy. Change this from a float to a boolean, and we can just drag in this. So that should say if it's less than or equal to 0, then this will turn true. If it's false, it will turn false. Come back to the event graph and just get a print string, another one. I know you can append strings to only have one print string, but I don't really want that just yet. So false, 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 true. There you go. So only return true once this has completely gone down to 0, and what we can do with that is essentially just come out here, have a branch, and what we've done up here is basically turn the flashlight on or off and set the intensity. We can just left click, don't forget the spotlight as well, and copy and paste it down here the same you would with any text document. So we can get rid of this as well, set intensity to 0. So what this should do is once I turn it on, and it should turn off after a few seconds. Perfect. So that's how to use timers and how to create functions. Next step, let's get a UI element in. So what we can do is control space. I'm going to go make a new folder. So just right click, new folder, UI, open this up, and user interface, widget blueprint, and just use the user widget, and I'm going to call this flashlight underscore WB for widget blueprint. Open this up. So what do we want in here? Well, we want open up the panel here, or you can just search the actually and look for a canvas panel. Normally you would have like a master HUD widget, and then you would create like a flashlight widget blueprint or that stuff, but this is just for basic functionality. I will go into further depth on how to create a proper UI in another series or tutorial. Stay tuned for that. But yeah, what we want is a progress bar. Just in the, I'm going to make mine in the top left. I'm just going to expand this out, cover a decent part of the screen. So over here, you're going to have like the anchors, where it is in the screen, the size and the alignment, size to order. So the anchors basically control, as this screen size changes, which side of the screen or parts of the screen should the widget try to stick itself to. Since mine's in the top left corner, it makes sense for it to be anchored in the top left, so I'm going to keep it there. So the size, basically, it's self-explanatory. I like just keeping mine at a round number. And same with the size of Y, the position. I'm going to change mine to 50. Okay, so 40 is a little counterintuitive sometimes. So as the number increases, it goes down. It's basically because if I remember from my very basic computing class, the Y0 starts here and goes that way. So keep that in mind. Style, very easy as well. This is where you change like what this is going to look like. I'm going to keep mine like this because I don't need something fancy. And the percentage, basically how much it's going to be controlled by that. Bar fill type, so if you wanted to go from right to left instead, or fill from center, like that. Basically play around with it, see what feels good to you. What's basically important at this point is how to actually get this so that this actually fills up with the right percentage. So the normal way to do it, which I personally find is really inefficient, is to bind it, and this basically gets the percentage for the progress bar. I'm not going to do it this way. For starters, I think that I found bugs within Unreal 5 with that, and just come back here and remove the binding. I have found so many bugs with this in Unreal 5, like it doesn't work sometimes and it's just very unreliable. So the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to make a variable. I'm going to call it player reference, player ref. Expand this out and look for BP first person character. Should be the first one. Get an object reference. Scroll down here, make it instance editable, and expose on spawn. You'll see what that does in just a moment. Don't worry about replication or anything like this. That's just for multiplayer stuff, which I'll explain in a later tutorial series when I understand how multiplayer works in much greater depth. Go to the BP first person character, and just after you set the timer by event, drag off here and type in create widget, and here you will select the class as the widget that you just created. Drag off this and just type in self. What this does is it gets a reference to this instance of the blueprint, basically this character. Don't worry about owning character, but you can just drag this out and get controller, and that will essentially get the play controller. So you would think that if we were just to play this, it would add it to the viewport, but no, this just creates the widget. To return value, you need to add to the viewport for it to actually be added to the viewport, the view. So if we go now, and it should now appear, but you might be thinking, like, how do we get the flashlight battery power actually there? To do that, go to the flashlight underscore WB and the event tick for now, just for now. Don't worry if you think this is really inefficient, we will be changing this, we're just making sure that everything's working properly. And get the progress bar as well. Set percent, and from the player reference get flashlight battery power, and in percent is between 0 and 1, so we need to divide this by 10. So it now ticks down, and when that reaches 0, it does that. Is it just me, or did it not go down completely before turning off? What's going on? Print string, not prime sound. No, I'm not used to this keyboard yet. Print string, append. I'll just drag in both of these. Weird. It's going down to 0 before it's going up. That is very odd. I'll do some debugging off camera, see if I can fix what's going on, but what's important is that it's working appropriately. Compile this, save it. So, how do we actually get the information to here only when it's needed? What we do is go to the BP first person character and add a event dispatcher, and just call it on update flashlight power. And over here, where we get the inputs, we want to add an input parameter and call it power. And we want to change the variable type to float. And before the branch, we want to call this and we should probably divide it by something before it goes in here. And this is going to be, so if this is 10, let's actually put this to 50 to begin with, and let's put this to 50. So compile this, come back to the flashlight, and on construct, instead of doing this, instead of on tick, say assign on update flashlight power, and it should create a custom event with the same name. We can get rid of the O1 at the end and just put it in here and do that instead. This is a lot more efficient than checking every tick or binding it, because what this will do is it will only update the UI when the variable has changed, which is, I think, even beginners can see how much more efficient that is. You guys are clever. I'm not going to insult your intelligence by saying that you're anything but clever. So there we go. And if you're wondering why it didn't auto load it, it's because it didn't know the value of the flashlight until it decayed. And I've got a very simple fix for that. So as you can see, it's working. If you go to here, back to the begin play, before this, actually no, after this, because if you remember the logic, this is being done on construct. So if you call this event before this, then this is going to be created after you've called it the first time. So it might actually be better to call this up here as well. So flashlight battery power divided by 50. Back up here, and there you go. Now working. Might actually be worth. Okay, so Control D to duplicate. Might be worth actually calling it at the end, because I think that's got the same issue as down here, because it's only going to get updated when you turn it on rather than at the beginning of play. So what? I think it's this that's causing the issue. Yeah, it was that. Okay, perfect. So, as you can see, it's now working perfectly. Was there a final thing I wanted to cover in this tutorial? Timers, UI, event dispatchers, functions. I think that was everything. So, this may not have been a perfect tutorial, but it should hopefully give absolute beginners a good basis to go off on their own and create new games. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with using these very basic tools. And I think there's one more thing I wanted to cover, but I'll save that for next time. I think I wanted to cover like how to make child classes and how to use interfaces, but I'll save that for the next episode. This has been amazing. I hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial. I hope it's been useful, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.